Good evening and welcome back to Dead Sleep True Crime for Bedtime. And I'm Nancy Miller, and I actually had a whole other episode planned for this week. And then, with the heat wave here in California, the days are kind of blurring together. Then I only just remembered that this week includes an important date for me and for billions of other people. 9/11. Most of us, even if you were a kid, you have a clear memory of where you were on September 11th, 2001. I have mine, you have yours, and we have a collective understanding here in the U.S. and around the world that it was a terrorist attack, an unprecedented tragedy that claimed the lives of thousands and affected thousands, millions, billions more that day and for the years to come. But what I hadn't thought about until yesterday, was that what was left behind after 9/11 at Ground Zero, that the Twin Towers and the surrounding area, the crater with debris, it was a crime scene, a forensic minefield of bent steel and smoldering concrete and missing people, lost souls. For days, weeks, months afterwards, there were thousands of first responders, firemen, police, investigators at Ground Zero trying to make sense of it all, to piece it all together and clean up tons and tons of debris. The scope of it was so overwhelming, authorities relied on volunteers, people who had a skill set that they needed at Ground Zero. Steel workers, construction workers, and in the case of one man, a man named Jeffrey Johns. He was a supervisor at the Transit Authority, and he was a specialist in emergency services. His expertise was typically disasters that happened underground in the subway. From accidents to people falling on the tracks, to crimes that happened anywhere on mass transit. So he knew what a disaster looked like. But when he volunteered to help clean up Ground Zero, he wasn't prepared for what he saw. Who could be? And so he decided to keep a diary, essentially writing emails to his friends and family, updating them every couple of days or every few weeks on what it was like to be there as someone who was helping with the largest crime scene that ever existed. So I'm going to share excerpts from those posts that he wrote, those emails, for today's episode. Typically, a mass terrorist attack wouldn't ever be anything that I would cover for Dead Sleep, but in this case, we made a promise 20-odd years ago now that we'd never forget. And I, of course, will never forget where I was and what I was doing. More important than that is remembering or learning, I guess, what people did, things I wasn't there to see. And in this story, you'll hear details that remind you of a crime procedural, like on a scale that's unfathomable. As you'll hear, this guy had a family, he had a wife and he had kids. He lived just outside of New York City. And he sacrificed time with his kids and put his marriage on the line in order to help other people, other families, recover the victims hoping to find survivors somewhere under all that debris. And this man, he worked that scene as a forensic volunteer, investigating layer after layer. He did it for months. And I found his depiction of what that was like fascinating, moving, with the intricate kind of details that I think makes Dead Sleep, I hope, kind of special. It reminded me of the kind of bedtime story we might have heard as children. You know, when your parents or grandparents, say, would sit on the edge of your bed and tell you about the lives that they'd had before you were born. The tragedy that helped define them and help you understand the courage and compassion that it takes to survive. So you'd remember it too. And you'd take their memories with you. And just as you would fall asleep, you'd feel grateful. And you'd feel safe. And you'd close your eyes. And you'd fall asleep. So again, these are excerpts from a series of emails sent by a World Trade Center Ground Zero volunteer named Jeffrey Johns, who worked the Ground Zero scene as a digger and excavator from the day after 9/11 until they finished cleanup officially in May of that following year, May 2002. His is just one story. And again, I'm telling one portion of it that's slightly edited for clarity. I encourage you to check out the links that I'm going to provide for this episode with more stories. And yes, this is tragic, but I think you'll find that his story is also riveting. There were a lot of things that happened on site at Ground Zero, also known as the pile. Dangers and hazards that we knew nothing about. And thanks to guys like Jeff, we can now get a richer picture so that we always remember. So we're going to start with the first entry of his email from September 15th, 2001. 4 days after 9/11. Hello. I have just gotten back from the piles that once were the Twin Towers. Today, I met people from all over the world. K9 search and rescue teams from Austria, South America, Canada, Finland, Washington State, Italy, everywhere. It goes like this. First, the tall 200,000-pound cranes pull the biggest stuff forward. The little 75,000-pound cranes separate it. Then the welders cut all of the steel. Then small cranes load the steel into trucks. Then the bobcats scrape the area. Then we move in. And I mean move in. There must have been 3,000 or more people making chains of buckets and debris. You name them, they were there. DEA, FBI, Secret Service, federal marshals, and some other guys that everyone answered to. Who the hell were they? My guess would be military brigadier generals in plain clothes. I alternated between two piles. When one was doing cranes, the other was digging, so I kept busy the whole day. I found some Secret Service stuff and gave it to them, and became their retrieval guy for all of their sensitive documents, weapons, and hardware in that pile. The Secret Service were in a 40-story building on the 9th and 10th floor that collapsed and is still burning. The other pile was the one that counted, Tower number 1. We dig until we expose a void, search the void, and if we find anything, we call for search and rescue. I do not want to go into what we saw, but I can say that I have no good news to report. The workforce was incredible. Cops, firemen, ironworkers, laborers, sergeants, detectives, lieutenants, workers as far as California. Did they drive here? No one got tired on the pile. There is no tired, or hungry, or hot. Only speed and power. We needed both to have a chance. I believe that no one survived if they were in their offices, elevator, or stairwell at the time of the fall. I got to see the fire department, and that was directly across from the trade center. They lost their entire company. I hope you never see the looks on those other firemen's faces as I did. The military presence was huge, and the F-14s, 15s, and 16s were a sight, and made us all scared every time we heard them. I explored when I had no pile to go to, all over, mostly burnt-out buildings. I fell into a hole filled with water up to my waist and cut my hand and leg in the process. I really took a lot of chances today. 100-foot drops were around every corner. I-beams weighing thousands of pounds loomed over our heads as we worked. I pray that there are people alive in the lower levels in the food courts, but after seeing what 850,000 tons of steel falling a quarter mile can do, praying is all we have left. September 19th, 2001. A lot of friends of mine are asking me if I am okay. So to answer all of you, I would say, yeah, I'm okay. Just real sad. Hard not to show emotion, overwhelmed at least once a day. My days are riddled with unimaginable ups and downs. Today, I made it into the lower levels, where the food courts and shops were. I expected to see a real chance of survivors. What I saw was the biggest reason why I was on the pile disintegrate before my eyes. I cannot tell the guys on the upper level what is down there. Then I find it hard to talk about. In the subways, there are places dedicated to the people missing. Pictures, flowers, and candles. And half of New York looking at them. There's one in Times Square. I was there 2 days ago to move a train into a shuttle area, and let me tell you, when someone who is looking through the pictures finds someone they know or love, 500 people come to that person just to touch them, hug them, hold them, cry with them. And everyone who walks by is also deeply affected, as I am. At dinner time tonight, I had 2 5- or 6-year-olds come to my door, and they asked me if I would buy anything from their Christmas catalog to benefit the people that were killed. Killed, I said. Yes, they both said. And then they took turns telling me about the terrorists, about where they live, and the Taliban. These kids knew everything about them. And further still, they knew the countries where the Taliban were located. I looked into the eyes of these children and saw the reason why my wife is pissed at me and why my kids shout "Daddy" and run to me. It's because I have not been around. I have been on the piles more than I've been at work or home. I even took off from work to stay there, but I ran out of days off. I went into my house and brought out pictures of Ground Zero I received a few days ago. The kids were in amazement. Maybe I shouldn't have done it. But these kids, they knew so much. Knowing my wife would buy a ton of crap from these kids, I told them to come back when they see a big white van in the driveway. They said, it's okay. They can wait. So we sat there and looked through the pictures together. And the one girl asked me if I was in the photograph. Yes, I replied. You were there? She asked. "Yes," I said. And the girl paused and said, "You are one of those heroes, aren't you?" "No," I said. "Yes, you are," she said. "No," I repeated. And then she hugged my leg, demanding that I was. After a few moments of tears, she raised her head and told me her aunt is still missing and she needs me to help find her. "I pledge to you all, I will not stop until the last brick is lifted and looked under, no matter what." September 22nd, 2001. Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, the Twin Towers foundation is also the seawall keeping the Hudson River from flooding into the substructure. If we remove too much debris from the piles, it will unbalance the pressure needed to maintain the foundation. It's over 7 stories deep. If this seawall collapses, which it might, it will make the towers falling look small in comparison. You can kiss Lower Manhattan goodbye. I've been told it would kill all the rescue workers in the holes, flood all the subways up to Canal Street, and all of the tubes leading to Brooklyn. That is over 10 subway stations. It would kill all of those people in the subway cars and all the people in the stations if they cannot get out in time. Each train holds 700 people or more, and there are an incredible amount of trains in the area at any given time. Also, there is the possibility of 5 blocks in the area would be undermined. That means 5 blocks of buildings falling down, and the greatest possibility of this happening would be at rush hour, when the vibrations are at their peak. All the trains, trucks, and claws all around are not helping matters. The engineers we really need are dead. 2 were killed in the bomb blast in the basement of the towers a few years ago, and the others were killed in the towers falling. Transit has their entire engineering division working on it. FEMA has sent their best. There are engineers here from every part of the world. I have spoken with some of them and they say it's chancy. Most have never been here before, and very few of them have any subway experience. To gain access to the area in question, we must go down to the partially collapsed tunnel on the west side. No one is allowed in there. They are expecting it to totally collapse at any time. Hold on to your hats, people, and wish us luck. We are going to need it. We are looking at over 10 times the damage of the towers falling, and yet we continue to work as if the danger does not exist. September 24th, 2001. Relax, everything is under control. The seawall is fine. It was pretty cool watching and helping them test it, but their fancy schmancy equipment. The job site has become so dangerous that only firemen and search and rescue teams can go in to cut steel. That blows. I am not part of any team. I'm a loner, so I walk around looking for some airplane stuff or anything else I can turn in. If I see some firemen I know, I can help dig, and that feels good. But they are becoming fewer and fewer. My wife needs me to spend some time with her. The pile is hot, twisted steel, enough to build a freaking transcontinental railroad. When people like senators come for the first time to see it, I go out of my way to catch their expressions. But it's the same every time, no matter who it is. I'm finding that a lot of people on the subway had someone they knew there. They are easy to spot, but not easy to ignore. I am starting to have nightmares. Food hasn't tasted good, and I find it hard to laugh at anything for over a second. This morning in the subways, as I was on my way to Zero, I was adjusting my mask and it hit me hard. I will not lie. The smell of 6,000 people, the navigating of unstable beams weighing tons sliding around, not getting run over by all of the claws, the cranes, smoke, the noise, being watched by everybody. It's not easy. But to see the pain so many people are in makes it the only choice to make. I got a letter with my lunch today from a miniature McDonald's they have set up. It reads, "Thank you," on the front with a picture of the flag, on an angle, and a red fireman with a yellow hose. "Dear Saver, thank you for being so brave. You did a very good job. Love, Maddie." Somehow, my day was okay. Someone far away whom I will never know, never meet, made me feel better with their love in a letter. I hope you have enjoyed my letters. I think it has greatly helped me to write them. I will write one again in a few weeks. As I am sure I will need closure on this, please feel free to email me to let me know that I have not been talking to a wall. Thanks. October 18th, 2001. The conditions in the zone could not be worse. The rain, the colder nights, the hoses spraying everywhere, the mud, the noise is incredible. The smell, the lifting, digging, and the steam is overwhelming. Good news is, the core temperature is down to about 1,000 degrees. Work is still very slow, but now we have access to almost everywhere we want. Still, the battalion chiefs will not risk one life to go into the deep voids. That is very hard for the family firemen to take. You know who they are, you stay out of their way, and you dig, carefully, effectively, and quietly. We have a big-time shortage of one-handed pick and rake tools, the industrial ones. The average garden tool lasts for about 2 shifts. Everyone is becoming very cool with the idea that I am on the pile with them, and that feels good. I got kind of tired of showing my ID. It takes away all the camaraderie. There is, however, a dignity I feel when leaving the piles covered in mud, exhausted beyond rational thought. And the look of admiration in the eyes of the next shift makes me damn proud to be an American. I was born on Flag Day at 8:05 a.m., the time that American children are giving the Pledge of Allegiance. Cool, huh? I was given one of the homemade donated flags like the ones that are hanging on all the fences in the zone. I connect with this flag. Its alternative fate was to shred and fall in the high winds and rains like the others. March 11th, 2002. Tonight, emerging from the subways, I saw the big beams of light, and like a huge magnet, I was drawn, and I knew it was time. Time to go back to the future of New York, back to the birthplace of my adulthood, back to Ground Zero. There are more people than ever gathered around the site, all trying desperately to get a glimpse of what lies behind the green mesh, which was set up to keep them from seeing anything at all. The platform that was constructed for the general public to view the site does not give a great angle into the pit, nor does the small platform constructed for the family members to see in, located at the opposite end of the zone. Getting into Ground Zero is the hardest it's ever been. Contractors now rule all entrances, supplemented by the police, armed with bad attitudes and iron fists. However, after showing all my expired military and authentic transit identification and explaining my position, the guards reluctantly turned their backs and whispered, "I see nothing." And for that, I am grateful. The digging crews are now 6 stories down, on the bottom itself, and the railroad tracks are now exposed, hence the very bottom. The memorial lights are incredible to see up close, and as I was taking a picture of them, a plane passed between them. I hope the picture comes out. instead of looking at hundreds of grown men on the verge of tears at all times. Today I saw men with purpose, men with endless strength, men that I would be forever honored to call my friends. And for the first time, while driving home from Ground Zero, even I did not cry. May 30th, 2002. Today marked the end of the recovery effort at Ground Zero, and with a big ceremony planned, I knew it was time for me to say my final goodbyes. At the zone, you needed a special yellow pass to get in. I did not have one. Only the well-connected or the family members did. After circling the area for over an hour, asking all the police for entrance, I decided to approach the most decorated cop I could find. He only glanced at my credentials, but looked into my eyes, something no one had done, and said, "Go ahead in." There were about 50 huge television sets on stands set up along a walkway, in front of the 1010 Fire Company, and lots of sound equipment for announcing the different stages of the ceremony. This area was for the family members and those who carried a lot of tissues. There were police helicopters flying overhead in a V formation, but very few had their heads lifted high enough to see it. The columns of slowly marching bagpipes yanked out every tear I could shed and more. It feels like only last week that I was searching the voids. It has been over 6 months. My life is flashing by. Looking directly at the family members pouring out with emotion was too much for me, and I was not crying for them, but with them somehow. They are my family, and it is hard not to feel that I have failed them. Many of the police, firemen, and emergency service unit members needed someone to hold them up and try and keep them together. To no avail, because everyone fell victim to the realism of the moment and how powerless we are to fight our own emotions over the catastrophic loss of life. I had a chain link fence to grab onto, and I needed it. It was a difficult day for me, to say the least. The ceremony ended around 11 o'clock, but I stayed till 3, talking to other workers who were also there from the start. The stories we exchanged were straight from hell, a hell we all knew too well, and that admittedly haunts all of us daily. Some of the conversations were dominated by hindsight. What if only, why this, why that? But the new building codes kept our imagination of future disasters in check, and we did our best to shield ourselves from the overwhelming guilt of not trying hard enough. We all did our best, and deep down inside, we all know it. I made my last rounds, said my last goodbyes, and promised myself I would try to enjoy life a little more. Since 9/11, I have found that I hug my wife and kids a little tighter, a little longer, and with a lot more appreciation. I fear I've grown up, and I don't like the way it feels. We get only one go-around. We are all here for a very short time. I have not written about the grisly details of the work I performed for a reason. The daily flashbacks that consume me are too intense to impose them onto anyone I care about. I know it is all a part of who I am. I can only hope that I am somehow a better person because of it. I have my doubts. Anyone who was there knows what I mean. But it is time to say goodbye, something I never imagined would be this hard. I have seen the best and the worst that mankind has to offer, up close and personal. It was an experience that has no words to its title, only numbers. Thank you to Jeffrey M. Johns and to everyone who has contributed to the 9/11 Living Memorial. I will share a link to that Living Memorial website. I'll be back next week with an all-new True Crime for Bedtime episode. Until then, nighty-night.